I'm speaking to Geert Doyer, who's a corporate financier or finance advisor as well. So this is the kind of guy, when you have a great idea, you put your strategy together, you need funding, he's the guy that you speak to. He pulls the funders together, he makes sure that either it be a turnaround thing or a new entrepreneurial endeavor, he's the guy that gets it right. Not only that, he's got a whole bunch of businesses himself, he works with people closely, he advises them, and so there's a lot to learn from a person like us who sees things from a pretty macro perspective.
Okay, the strategy is very important to you. So when you are talking strategy, how important is it in making sure that it's going to make a company work that you're looking at investing in?
Mark, the strategy overall is the plan that drives the final outcome, whether the company is going to succeed or not. But we always look very, very careful at practical implementation of the plan, rather than just the desktop version of it. And I make sure that the people behind the plan have got the qualifications and the experience to actually implement what they speak to.
Okay, so it's not just about having a very nicely worked out desktop research, looking at all the pestles and the SWOTs and all those kinds of nice things, and the vision and all that. Who's going to put the thing into place?
Absolutely.
And how do you build that into your calculation of whether the business is going to work or not?
Mark, I think the analyses that you referred to gives comfort that the plan is in the right spot, and that we can proceed to the next step where we physically look at who the guys are and what they're going to do. Experience counts for so much in the South African context, especially. The South African venture capital market has not developed to the extent that there's surplus funds slushing around waiting for investors to lap it up.
Yes.
We typically access angel investors who have been in businesses all their lives, and they have seen the physical and operational implementation of business plans succeed and fail.
Yes.
Therefore, sitting in front of an angel investor and convincing him of a new plan is very, very difficult. So proper practical experience counts for much, much more than a well-presented strategy in the South African market.
Now, you must have come across a whole bunch of experience yourself in doing this for as many years as you have. So how quickly can you recognize that something's going to work or not?
Mark, unfortunately, most people in this space and most people in the venture capital space will, within 10 or 15 minutes, decide that they're going to proceed with a transaction or not. Most people are very pleasant and they're very polite and they will hear out the whole story. But the decision is made very, very quickly. One of the reasons why the guys are so quick to make their decisions is the fact that most of them have been in the industries that they're investing in themselves, and they understand exactly where the market is, and they will be prepared to back a new venture or a branch in that same industry going into a new space very quickly. But if it's something that they've seen before, they will not go for it.
All right, how important is experience then on the part of the person who is bringing the proposal to you?
Mark, I think the experience will inform the promoter whether the industry can actually work or not. And I think something I'd like to refer to is a lot of guys identify a small niche in a particular industry where they can make good money for themselves, but they're not necessarily going to make money for an investor. And I think that's an important distinction that new business promoters have to understand and make themselves before they take something to an institutional investor who's going to look for a business plan that has the opportunity to grow into something substantial. So
Okay.
a small niche market can be very profitable for an individual, but is not necessarily an investable proposal because of the size of the market it's going into.
All right, there's this magic thing of 10,000 hours in an industry or doing your thing. Do you look for that? And does that hold true in your experience for people that are coming with a new thing? You're not going to bring a new person into an industry, somebody who's done their time, their 10,000 hours of what they're expected to do?
Mark, the 10,000 hours I think is true, but it is a luxury. People with that kind of experience are few and far between, and they are in a position to demand quite a lot more from an investor than what a startup could demand. So it's fantastic to have that kind of experience, but that kind of experience is very rare.
So the story is do your time.
Do your time. Absolutely do your time. You don't necessarily have to do 10,000 hours, but do your time, because it informs from the bottom up how a company actually works. I've seen many companies fail because the execution in the back office is not necessarily what is required to make the strategy succeed.
Cool. I want to speak about some real life war stories of how this has actually worked in the real world, but let's go and check something for real. Geert, you're involved with the guy that's put together Eureka. What is the story behind this? I mean, this is a pretty remarkable story.
Mark, I think this is an exceptional story. This is a company that didn't exist 20 years ago. In fact, if you look at the company registration number of Eureka, it's a 1997 registration number. So in fact, the company is 20 years old this year.
Yeah.
And the chap that founded that company is a guy by the name of Hendrik Maree. He's a serial entrepreneur. One of the other businesses that a lot of Johannesburg-based people will be familiar with is the Barney's Paint Stores.
Yes.
Which was also part of his empire, if we can call it that, many years ago. So Hendrik identified a gap in the market for the packaging and the distribution of nuts and bolts and screws. And if you guys want to have a look at this is the kind of product that he currently packages and distributes. And I think what he's done here is he has successfully solved the problem of the weekend DIY man.
Okay, so again, it's solving a problem, and he's getting a big reward for it.
I think so, Mark. I think it's an exceptional. It may look very, very simple. It may look as if not a lot of effort has gone into this, but there's, I think, a well-developed strategy behind all of this, and then the execution of this is very, very good. I think anyone who walks into a hardware store, into the neighborhood hardware store, will recognize these packets and will see what they are. So there's a big logistical operation and a lot of hard work on a day-to-day basis that actually supports the success of this business.
And it's such a simple concept. It's not like screws are new and bolts and nuts and things like this. It's all been there. He's just putting them into a manageable packaging system.
I think so, Mark, and I think that is the beauty of the concept. It is such a simple concept, but to execute this successfully, a lot of hard work had to go into this. I mean, you've got to understand that there's a national distribution network behind this.
Yes.
There's an international procurement system behind this. The packaging is done locally, but it's something where the effort to execute the seemingly simple business plan, I believe, is world class.
Packaged screws to agricultural products. Is there strategy behind that? Absolutely. The agricultural sector in Southern Africa, or in the world for that matter, in many, many countries, is foundational to the success of the economy. So how important is it to have a strategy in terms of the suppliers and, in fact, along the value chain to the buyers of the agricultural product? So Wolf Edmeyer is one of the champions within that particular industry. This is somebody else that you've worked with. What's his story?
Mark, Wolf Edmeyer is somebody who has his roots very firmly in the agricultural sector. I first came across him when I worked at Ethos Private Equity, where he was the manager of a company called Sweet Ore and Libro. Sweet Ore and Libro is a protective gear distributor, and he very successfully ran that business. After that, after Wolf successfully sold the business, he sort of, I don't know if I can call it retired, back to his farm in the Free State, in the Frankfurt area. But then again, because of his talents and what he's done in the market, he got involved with one of the old co-ops in South Africa. Now, BKB was traditionally the biggest distributor and marketer of the South African wool clip. After 1994, the South African traditional co-op farming environment changed significantly. And a lot of the protected markets that the co-ops had played in were thrown wide open. And BKB had to reinvent itself. And if one looks at the results of BKB of late, they actually published their annual results for 2017 in the past week. So it's probably something that the guys
very
can have
fresh.
a look at.
Yes.
It's very, very fresh. The company reinvented itself as a supplier of goods and services to their traditional client base in the rural farming communities. The company turned over 9.5 billion rand, and it made a profit of in the region of 240 or 250 million rand.
Yes.
But this was a company that was struggling 4 or 5 years ago. It reinvented itself. It looked at its assets, which were distributed right across the country, where they had retail outlets almost in every small little town. And the company is today an investable prospect. It's a company that can be listed on the stock exchange, yet it plays in a market that many people may not think is an attractive market.
How much strategy went into this reinvention of the company to bring it to the success that it has now?
Mark, I think quite a lot had to go into rethinking the position of the company in its market. The company was very, very asset intensive. It used to own wool sheds right across the country. It used to own quite a lot of a big wool floor in Port Elizabeth, and it came to the point where the company was actually targeted by institutional investors as an asset strip candidate.
Yes.
And instead of going down that line and throwing in the towel and just realizing the assets of the business, these guys got in and they turned the business operationally around. So the company was actually at a very important decision point in its life. Either lock up and realize the assets,
Yes.
or reinvent itself, and they did that very successfully.
You've told me that Wolf has a particular style that helps with the implementation of strategy, new culture, a new way of infusing a different kind of DNA into the company.
Absolutely, Mark. He's very, very involved, hands-on involved in everything he does. He's not afraid to get into his car and drive to each and every one of the little outlets they've got in the rural areas and have a look at actually what's happening. So in that sense, they've been very successful. He's also been successful in adding new businesses to the company. They have gone on an acquisition trail. Going on an acquisition trail with a successful track record, they've managed to secure additional funding in the business.
Yes.
I believe one of the wealthiest man in South Africa is a shareholder in the company now.
Way to go. So not only does he do that high-end super funding stuff, but he also walks around on the floor.
On the ground. He understands what the needs and the requirements of the clients are, and he makes sure that the product and the service is delivered at ground level.
And thus the strategy works.
Well, we can see it in the results, and we can see that the company is no longer a target for an asset strip. If the company was not realizing the returns on the assets it owned, it would have been pulled apart by the guys that are involved with it at the moment.
Wow. Okay. Good one. Geert Doyer, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Insightful.
Good luck.
Okay. So now, go out there, make it happen.